Now you can get your hands on The Ghost Who Walks. Here's your look at the NECA toys, the original superheroes, the Phantom. The myth of the Ghost Who Walks began in 1536 when the father of British sailor Christopher Walker was killed during a pirate attack. Swearing an oath on the skull of his father's murderer to fight evil, Christopher became the Phantom, a legacy that would continue for centuries, passing from father to son. Kit Walker, the 21st Phantom, lives in Skull Cave with his wife Dinah Palmer, two loyal animal companions, Wolf Devil and Horse Hero, and Garon, his best friend since boyhood. This figure is largely based on the Phantom interpretation by legendary comic artist Cy Berry. Before we find out who fears the Phantom, how about the first thing we actually do? First of all, is thank the folks over at NECA Toys who made this review possible by providing the sample of the Phantom, providing the sample, of course, of Flash, and providing the sample of Ming the Merciless, the other two figures we've already had a look at. Let's bring in now the ruler to see how tall the Phantom stands. And the figure's 7 inches in height, or he's about 18 centimeters tall. Previously looked at, Flash Gordon, we can bring him in. Previously looked at Ming the Merciless, we can bring him in. And where I have dropped the ball in the earlier instances of not bringing the earlier looked at Defenders of the Earth versions of Flash Gordon and Ming the Merciless, I promise I will not drop the ball any further. I'm going to free up a little bit of space and bring in the originally released Phantom, also from the Defenders of the Earth line. Colors are a lot darker, though, on the new original Superheroes version of the Phantom, and he does have the notable stripes also on his underoos. Gotta say, these original superheroes have done pretty good for themselves in the accessory department, and Phantom is no slouch either. Let's first of all have a look at a pair of pistols. Almost dropped them there for a second. The pistols themselves, while molded, yes, in black plastic, it doesn't look like they get any bit of additional paint to them until you look at the handles. And as you can see, he's left his mark behind to tell everybody that these pistols belong to him. Is that where Peacemaker got the idea from? One thing that's good about the pistols is if you flip them around. On the other side is also the same skull marker. Now, attention to detail for how small these are. The fact that they would be able to get in there and paint it as well as they did without leaving any bit of extra mark. Nice job on NECA's part. Now, these pistols can fit in his hands, though not really the hands that are currently in the sockets of his forearms. They can also be holstered into the sides of his belt. I won't do that just yet because there's one other thing we have to look at as well. The Phantom comes included with some blast effects, firing effects that can attach onto the ends of the gun. They're not the same ones, though, that came included, though, with Ming or Flash, as the opening on this one is a little bit longer, because, of course, it has to fit on the end barrel of the gun. And whereas the other ones were giving me a little more problems to stay in place, you could, in fact, do the blizzard test on these pistols. That little firing effect isn't going to be going anywhere. Some nice use of translucent yellow plastic. As I certainly said, though, you can take the figure and move his arms up, almost as if he's doing a morning stretch. You can then take the pistols and slide them into the holsters on either side. You can also see as well, they put the skull motif on both the sides. This one side does have a little bit of additional silver paint bleed, although this side is pretty clean. I'm going to go ahead and take the holster and slide those in. And where I did have a difficult time with both Ming and Flash of having the flaps that folded over on the holsters, Phantom, as you can see, doesn't have that issue. And it's certainly a lot easier to holster and draw the guns whenever he needs them. Of course, it's not going to be helpful, of course, for him to hold the guns right now because he's got a pair of closed fists. On the ready, though, NECA Toys did include a couple of other swappable hands as well. We'll have a look at those first. First of all, he comes included with some trigger firing hands. Nicely sculpted with just the pointer finger sticking out to wrap around the trigger end of the gun. You may also see as well some nicely painted rings on the ring finger of him. These also will be swapped out. I'll do that in a second. The figure also comes included with a gripping hand for the included whip. Wait, the figure comes included with a whip? He does. Stay tuned. This one also does have the ring painted and sculpted nicely there on his finger. You can see the little skull there right there. And the figure does also have a grasping hand for holding the oath skull. Wait, the figure comes with an oath skull. Patient. We're going to get to that in a second. So he comes with those for his swappable hands. Figure also comes included with a whip. The nice thing about the whip, I have to say, is while you may look at it and just assumed it was just sculpted plastic, in actual fact, it's a wire frame. I don't know if I would necessarily have wrapped it up completely as if he's wrapped up the whip, because that probably will just be a very difficult time to probably extend that back out. But at least if you did want to have it in a more dynamic pose when you have it displayed on the shelf, you can wrap the, I don't know how dynamic I'm going to get with a whip like this, but at least you can kind of wrap it around his body, get in a real cool looking pose. The neat thing about this one is also he seems to continue the trend of identifying each one of his weapons as these belong to me. Hands off. Don't touch them. The detail work on just that little skull alone, I really like how it looks almost like a cartoon skull. And as you can see, not only have they painted it gray, but they've also painted a wash of black over top of it to fill in those little crevices and creases. You see the sockets of the eyes stand a lot more, adding that additional necessary black. The handle itself looks to be like it's just molded in black plastic, while the end of the whip handle actually gets some additional darker gray. And this can fit into his hand. Which hand? The whip hand. This hand right here. Figure also comes included. This is fun. He comes included with the oath skull. I really like the idea that they included the oath skull along with this. And it does have articulation too. You can open up the mouth and say, beware. Really nice work on paint. Certainly NECA Toys have done an outstanding job of sculpting the blood oath, the oath skull. Rather interesting thing about the skull, though, is if you look on the underside of it, that seems like a socket, doesn't it? Can you take the figure? Can you remove the head on the Phantom? First of all, the answer to that is yes. Although, unlike the other figures that we've looked at earlier, both Flash Gordon and Ming the Merciless, I found with Phantom's head, it was a lot more difficult time of getting the head off. So I would recommend, if you are picking this figure up for yourself, if you're having a struggle to get that head in place, use the hair dryer trick, run a few passes, or you can also submerge it in hot water. The ball joint does, in fact, though, fit the oath skull. With some additional afforded pressure added onto it, you can get the head onto the neck, although in the time that I've now... This has cooled a bit. Originally, I did submerge this in hot water. I probably could have run a few more passes with some hot water or a hairdryer, soften up that socket, but it does actually fit onto the ball joint. That's pretty cool. And I would imagine, too, you probably could use this skull with other NECA figures that have that same similar ball joint. Ideas right now are starting to swim in my head. For the purpose, though, of the rest of this review, we're going to go ahead and put the Phantom's head back in place. There we go. That's the more satisfying snap I was hoping for. Let's go ahead now and change out the hands. The hands involve me holding onto the forearms, involves me also swiveling, yanking these hands out. The thing I noticed about these hands is that the pegs seem longer, though, than both Flash and Ming. And I don't know why specifically Phantom gets a lot longer posts, but again, like no paint whatsoever built up on the joint. I don't know really if NECA is changing out a location of where they're painting their pieces, or maybe a different factory, for example. But it definitely does seem like, you know what, let's get the skull, the oath skull hand in place. Just does seem like the paint's a lot nicer on these figures. Not that they really weren't nice before, but you get the idea. We're going to go ahead now and take the oath skull. The oath skull, by the way, it doesn't really have a designated place. There's not a peg or anything that sits inside the head or in the skull. You sort of just have to rest it onto the hand. Doesn't that just look the coolest thing ever? Going to be definitely displaying the figure with the oath skull in his hand. And of course, yeah, if you did want to display the figure with, say, a pistol in his other, go ahead and just do the exact same process, rinse and repeat. Find the appropriate hand. Long post again, you're going to have to deal with. And just put the back in the forearm. One thing I would certainly recommend is if you are putting it back in the forearm, don't resist the urge to just immediately force it in. You do want to rotate it a slight bit. Because if you do push it in and there's resistance, you could potentially break the peg. And that's going to make everybody very, very sad. Or at least the people that own this figure and doing that very, very sad. And then from there, of course, you can take the pistol, fit it into his hand, and the trigger firing finger is perfectly lined up to the trigger. Fancy that. So those are the accessories that come included with the Phantom. Lots of good stuff going on with this figure. And yeah, lots of good stuff continues on with this figure because we're going to move this guy over and just bring in... Yeah, so totally dropped the ball last time. Bringing the Defenders of the Earth version of the Phantom, you can definitely see an upgrade, certainly on the color, is a lot richer, I find, on the new original Superheroes version of the Phantom, where you get a much darker, first of all, coloring of purple, but then also added in there as well some nice darker contrast in airbrushed colors. You can see primarily really happening here on the torso, for example. The lighter colors, don't get me wrong, are still fine. And the good thing about this is it doesn't read as the exact same Phantom. In fact, for the many Phantoms as there's been, you can easily just have these displayed on your shelf as two different incarnations, two different versions of passed down lineage. One Phantom from a different lineage and then passed down to the newer one. You can do that certainly as well. Bodies certainly seem to be the same on in both the cases, although the new Phantom, of course, does have the leg holsters for its pistols. The original Phantom didn't have that. Belt seems also to be the same. But again, the big difference, though, is the newer Phantom does have the alternating colors of the lighter blue and the black striped across its trunks, whereas the original Phantom really kept just the more lighter color of the lavender. Boots also seem to be the same, although the originally released Phantom does seem to have shinier boots. The newer Phantom, though still sporting the same footwear, seems to have a more muted or madder color of black. Peg holes are also the same on both the figures as well. So we really are going to be getting just a matter of preference. I still really like this one. This one also does benefit from glow-in-the-dark eyes. Don't worry, we're going to look at the glow-in-the-dark eyes in a second. But first of all, let's just look at the head sculpt. The head sculpt is going to be the same, as I certainly have pointed out in the previous instances before. I gotta just say, like, the paint is getting better on these figures. And where there was problems before, it has been pointed out by other collectors that, yeah, there's always been a paint buildup problem on the joints of some of these NECA figures. You'll see right here, like, there's no paint whatsoever. I haven't flaked anything off. In fact, I mean, even looking at my hands right now, there's nothing there's a little bit of paint. But, I mean, even if you look at the inside socket where the elbow is, it's just the plastic. Like, the paint is getting so much better on these figures now. For the articulation on new Phantom, first of all, his head rotates all the way around. You can hinge the head up and down and rock it back and forth as well. Shoulders work the same way as the originally released Phantom, so the arms do come out at a 90-degree angle bend. You can rotate the arms all the way around. Do the exact same thing, yeah, all the way around. He has a swivel in the bicep here as well. Double hinge on the elbow, and the hands rotate all the way around and hinge back and forth. While the figure doesn't have an upper torso ball joint, what he does get instead is a torso crunch. So he can bend the abdomen area right there. If you want to have him more of a lunging or kind of curved down pose, almost looks as if he's moping a bit. The figure does also have a waist swivel, as with the other cases before. We looked at both Flash Gordon and Ming also possess the same. Essentially, they are using the same bodies. They've tooled, of course. This is kind of like the stripped down of what the figure's body looks like without all the extra stuff added onto it. Flash had a lot more added to his torso, and Ming had even more so on top of that. The figure's legs do split out, and with the holsters being attached where they are, they're not attached to the thighs at all, so when it comes to rotating the legs or hinging the legs out, the holsters do a good enough job of staying out of the way. Stay out of the way. Legs go forward and back this way. There's a swivel at the top where that's attached to the ball joint inside there. Figure has a double hinge on the knee. Figure has a swivel in his boot. Ankle articulation this way, and ankle articulation this way as well. Figure also has toe articulation, so again, still sticking to the same body build as the original Phantom. Just again, a preference more than anything else. I like the darker colors myself. And I gotta say, like the striped coloring that they've added also to the trunks does bring in some additional color, which the original Phantom, unfortunately, just by the makeup and the design of this particular version of the Phantom, just unfortunately did not have. More preference again than anything else, but I gotta say I'm really liking the look of this Phantom a lot more. Now, while I have been yammering away, I did advertise the idea that this guy does have glow-in-the-dark eyes, so of course, now that we're going to be absorbing some of the light during all this yammering, I'm going to go ahead and cut the lights and see how bright these eyes actually do glow. With a quick cut of the lights, you may or may not actually see his eyes glowing. Of course, for me, the person that's actually operating the camera, I can see his eyes glowing a nice, very bright, almost fluorescent green color. Although, unfortunately, it gets a little bit lost when we're looking at it through the camera here. While the original Superheroes Phantom didn't really deliver in the eye glowing department, what it did deliver, though, is in the paint department. These figures continue to be a trend I've noticed with a lot of the NECA newer releases. I've started even seeing that with a lot of their TMNT cartoon turtles, that the paint seems different, and I can't quite put my finger on it. The colors seem a little sharper, and I find like the paint that they've applied to these figures' bodies seem a lot cleaner. You notice it especially when you start looking at the joints of the figures, more importantly like the elbow joints and the shoulder joints. In their past, yeah, there has been paint buildup in those locations, but I haven't really noticed that at all in the recent stuff that we've looked at here on this channel. Whether they have changed different painters that are now painting these figures or not, it does seem like the paint quality and the plastic quality of these figures have really been a lot different as of late. Now, again, when it comes to this release of Phantom, at least in this opportunity, in this review, I had the chance to deliver the original Defenders of the Earth Phantom, where you could see the differences between the two. And I wouldn't say it's the case where you would want to just give away the other Phantom now, realizing that this is the better paint job. Considering as well that we've got, 21 Phantoms over the years of having the lineage being passed down. You easily just kind of have more than one Phantom on your shelf and just pretend it's two different people picking up the mantle of the Phantom. And that's the one thing I like about these figures, is that they're not necessarily competing with the ones we've got before from the Defenders of the Earth line. They are their own new thing. Brand new sculpts, brand new paint, and brand new different feel when we're looking at these figures. This one also benefits from also having the Oath skull, which is a really nice touch that they included it, and the fact it's got a ball joint on the inside, or a socket joint on the inside of the skull. Even if you don't decide to use it with the Phantom, I am pretty certain you probably could use it with another NECA figure. I'm trying to think of what I could even do that with. A Michael Myers, perhaps, with a skull head. I think that's maybe taking things to too much the extreme. But what do you guys think, though, of the new original superheroes, the Phantom? A pretty nice looking figure. Big thank you, though, to the folks, once again, over at NECA that did provide the sample of the Phantom, did provide the sample of Flash, did provide the sample of Ming that we've looked at over the last couple of reviews. Which is your favorite figure, by the way, of the three figures that we've looked at here? Let me know down below in the comment section. And hey, now, if you are new to this channel, you're enjoying the content that you're seeing, a couple of things you can do to certainly help yourself a little bit better, by one of which, subscribing to this channel. Another one, you can also turn on the bell notification, so you're going to get those reminders of whenever new videos are going to be popping up. Because unfortunately, the way the lay of the land is right now, sometimes those that aren't hitting that bell notification and aren't turning on the notifications to be alerted when this channel is posting new content, sometimes, unfortunately, you may be missing out on the videos that get popped up on this channel on a regular basis. So I'd always encourage you guys, if you get the chance, just a few extra seconds on your part, just make sure you turn on the bell notification so you're going to get all the notifications of whenever new videos are popping up. Speaking, though, of which, at the very end of this video, popping up will be a playlist of other NECA reviews that I've done. I've covered a few things from NECA over the years. Okay, I've covered a lot of stuff from NECA over the years. There's definitely going to be a lot of videos in that playlist that you can check out when you've got a little bit of time on your hands. We're going to be, of course, looking at some more NECA reviews lined up, so, of course, always keeping your peepers peeled to this channel. And as always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.